Hello and welcome to the Idiot Book Nook. My name is Blazewing. My pronouns are she, her, and they, them.
I am the Reading Dragon. My pronouns are she, her.
My name's Lady Punnett. My pronouns are primarily she, her, sometimes they, them. Today is they kind of day.
And Crittershy is unfortunately unable to join us for the moment. Maybe back later this episode. We shall see. Crittershy's pronouns are she, they, and I believe Critter said today was a they kind of day. If I remember.
Or her.
I believe so.
Oh, no. Critter said it is a she, her kind of day. My bad. Something like that. We'll get into that when Critter gets back.
Yeah. And it could change throughout the day as well. So.
Absolutely. Because
genders are weird.
And gender can be fluid. Absolutely. With that being said, we are going to be getting into the discussion portion of Chapter 7 of Prospero School of Magic, written by A.P. Whitfield.
And we had just messaged our Discord chat saying that she had to go run out to get something for her little one.
Okay. So running out now, or has already run out?
On her way home.
Okay, no worries. We shall check in with Critter when she gets back. Mm-hmm. We're going to be getting into Chapter 7 of Prospero School of Magic, or at least the discussion portion of that chapter, because we had a lot of commentary. It took us a while to get through that, but we did eventually manage to do that. Mm-hmm. But let's kickstart this. What are you guys thinking for Chapter 7? What are your notes?
So first things first, something I want to comment actually about the portrayal about slightly heavy topic to start with, the portrayal of domestic violence, because it has been proven that sons typically try to shield younger siblings and the mother from the physical abuse, while daughters typically cling to the mother to share it. So it was actually a very good display of how it typically works, which I thought was good. Clearly a lot of research was put into that. Really disappointed that a school that apparently has cell phones and technology doesn't have cameras. Because they're a private school. You mean to tell me they're not concerned about this type of thing, or their students going to do some hanky-panky stuff?
It might have not been that much of a concern. Otherwise, there's a possibility that it is surveillanced, but they just happened to be in an area that did not have cameras.
A.P. Whitfield.
Like a blind spot.
Sorry, finish your thought.
Like a blind spot. Like they just so happened to have been in a blind spot at the moment.
A.P. Whitfield, the author of this book, is actually joining us in chat, which, if you're looking at the YouTube, you'll be able to see that, just over here next to me, says, I lived in it. So A.P. Whitfield is known as the username AP_cosplay_author. And living in a domestic abuse situation, I would like to just first and foremost say that's kind of a shitty situation to be in.
It's especially shitty when you actually don't have anybody to protect you or share with, like myself, because I also grew up in an abusive situation.
There were abusive situations in my family when I was younger as well. So I kind of feel that. Abuse is a very heavy topic. There's a lot of it sprinkled throughout this book from what I am seeing, so just take that into account. And if this is your first encounter with it in our readings, be aware that we do deal with kind of graphic content. This is 18 plus. This is an 18 plus podcast and stream for a reason. There are mature topics. But use your best judgment, and we recognize that this podcast might not necessarily be for everybody, specifically because of some content that we do deal with here. We try not to censor content unless it is extremely detrimental, is generally considered propaganda,
or just in poor taste.
Or could get us community guidelines violations.
Which is why sometimes we can't read when they play chess.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That was a euphemism.
Mm-hmm.
Next thing is, so I like how they kind of just brushed over the, oh dang, I had a crush on my sister thing without making it weird.
Mm-hmm.
Because even though, yes, they were siblings in a past life, biologically speaking, right now they aren't, but he still acknowledges, like, yeah, no, that's kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move on from that. Like,
yeah.
he's like, let's move on from this now.
So it reminds me, so I grew up with stepbrothers. My bonus dad and my mom got married when I was like 5.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my brothers, who is close to me in age, he's only like 5 months older than me, is what most would be considered a very attractive man.
Circle and Attack has redeemed feed.
Great.
Already
so
eating.
When I was like in around grade 8, grade 9, some people saw him and he's like, oh my god, he's so cute. Did you ever have a crush on him? And I looked at him like, that's my fucking brother. He's like, well, he's your stepbrother though, so it doesn't count. I'm like, no, he's my brother who I grew up with.
Those connections get really, really weird, especially when it's a mixed family like that. Like, they might not be blood relation, but you're still raised with them. They are still part of your family, which societally is kind of the same.
Yep.
Even if it's not a biological thing, right?
Yeah, I think it's a bit more of a gray area if they're all like... I think, in my opinion, the cutoff point where it stops being weird is 18.
Yeah.
Like, the parents get married when they're when the kids are all like 18 years old or like grown-ass adults.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't grow up together. They didn't know each other existed until the parents started dating. And even then, it's still kind of...
Yeah.
It would be especially weird if, like, the two kids were all, like, already adults and whatnot. They start dating, and then the parents of each side meet, and then one of the parents from each side are just like, hey, you know, we got feels. And I was like, yo, no. No.
AP Whitfield says most of the big horrible things...
Landlord's here, I think.
Okay. So AP Whitfield says most of the big horrible things Clara went through, I went through. And that's the thing with writers. That's the thing with writers. Like, writers can have vivid imaginations, imagine all sorts of circumstances. But when you boil it down to its very base, writers can only write about what they know. This remains true throughout basically all time. I can't remember who it was that originally said that, but it's something that's, as an amateur writer, somebody who's been writing on and off for years and has a varied collection of unpublished works, like, it remains, it remains true through the test of time. It's just as relevant now as it was, say, 20 years ago. If you don't know about certain things, you have to either research it, or you can't write about it, or you have to have lived experience, or you can't write about it. It's just the way things are, right? Otherwise, you get things wrong. You misconstrue, you portray things in an unrealistic light. You can't make it believable.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts?
I agree with that, especially as someone who... and it's not just in writing as well. A lot of other forms of artistic media, such as painting, that is trying to portray a certain emotion or a certain event without saying the words themselves. It really helps if the artist for that, as an otherwise amateur artist, both self-taught and educated, if you're not pulling from your own emotion and experience when doing your drawings or your paintings and whatnot, how are the viewers going to actually get that conveyed to them?
Yeah.
And that's kind of one of the reasons why, while AI artwork, those like AI rendered art pieces, they're cool and all that, but they don't convey the same emotions.
No, So I've actually dipped into AI artwork a fair bit. If you follow my Instagram at all, you'll notice that I have a story that comes up every day, at least once a day on both Facebook and Instagram. It's an AI generated artwork piece.
Mm-hmm.
The reason that I like it is because AI can pull out an idea and render that into something that you can see, which helps to put me in a certain state of mind, or it gives me a certain feeling. It's the aura about it that helps me to imagine things, right? It might not get the emotions that you're looking for exactly, which, I mean, it's rudimentary AI. It has its downside, but it can help me. It can help kind of further that idea. And I'm actually going to be using it when I do my campaign 2 for D&D. I'm actually going to be using AI generated images to help set the scene, and I've already started doing that with campaign 1.
See, I was thinking of doing that with Megalodonia.
Yep, I can show you where to find an AI bot for that. But anyways, before we get too far off track here, moving back to kind of the book, was there anything else that you noticed this chapter that you wanted to talk about?
Let's see here. Freaking finally getting up the nerve to be like, you know what, this abuse is enough.
Yep.
We're going to just go ahead and get you out. And then finding that you actually have the resources and the connections that can help you get out of there.
So despite the issues that I have with this book, and I haven't really hidden that I have issues with this book, specifically from an editorial standpoint, grammar, spelling, punctuation, and all of that.
Yeah.
Maybe the way things are phrased, they don't flow naturally, which again, AP, I want to sit down with you and make a style sheet, specifically so when I go through and work on things, I know exactly kind of what I'm going for. One of the things that I actually liked about this chapter was when the father started beating up on Daniel and literally caused him to start bleeding. He hit him hard enough to start him to cause him to start bleeding out.
Internal bleeding and a concussion.
And a concussion, which I want to touch on how that concussion was portrayed, but just kind of the basic of it. The guttural reaction for me was, I want this guy dead.
Mm-hmm.
You have no right to lay your hands on somebody like that. I loved the emotion that evoked in me.
Yep.
So for me, I work best with emotion. I take my emotions, I channel them into whatever I'm working on.
Yeah.
I use that to draw pictures with words. Like, my emotions are how I channel everything. It created such a guttural reaction within me. Hello, critter. It created such a guttural reaction within me that I actually had to stop for a moment.
Yeah.
The concussion I have issues with because the way it was portrayed is the concussion coming on, whereas a concussion starts the moment the injury is sustained.
Yeah.
Someone who's had many, that's not how it goes.
Yeah, it starts the moment the injury is sustained for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
You may not realize it until later, or you may not realize it at all because some of them are subtle, whereas some of them are quite apparent, such as, cloudy thinking, your brain feels like it's all fuzzy. But
sorry about that, guys.
You're good.
You're good.
That's something I'm actually going to be kind of, I think, throwing into my notes, which is I'm kind of doing this read through with you guys first to get a sense of what I'm walking into and get a sense of things that need to be fixed. And then I will be I'll be sitting down and starting to actually go through it from an editorial standpoint and whatnot. My copywriting class is going to be wonderful for that, despite the fact that I'm probably going to fail the class, but I mean, it is what it is.
And AP says that it sounds good to her. They are in the market for a new editor.
So we should talk at some point today, AP Whitfield. DM me and let me know when you're free. I have things to do around 2 p.m. my time. I have to talk with my school actually around 2 p.m. my time. But let me know what your availability is today, and I will get back to you on that. I would like to sit down with you today though and chat about some things via voice or video or whatever. That being said, moving on. What else would we like to discuss about this chapter?
Cricket, since you just got back, any thoughts?
Critter?
Or Critter, yeah, sorry.
It's okay. I missed some chunks. Sorry about that. I had to like physically go outside to get stuff. It's fucking cold out there. Anyway, obviously, yeah, it's hard for me to say because I didn't like get to. I'll have to like read it and catch up. But it did feel like we're adding a lot of strings that could possibly either get tangled or go nowhere.
Yep.
Is what I'm worried about at this point.
That's what they used to use cork boards for. And as a matter of fact, I can actually potentially show you a software that I use for cork boarding. It's not quite the same. It uses, I think, markup for creating kind of the strings between pins. But I will show you, I can show you that program that I use. I can give you a kind of a breakdown of the programs that I use for writing and editing, and see if you might find them useful. So basically, I'm willing to share my resources, but you are absolutely right. There are some strings being added. I'm not sure exactly where they're going to go or if they're going to all get tied up. And if you have loose strings, it can kind of affect one's sense of disbelief or pull one out of the story, right? And kind of plot holes. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, and obviously, I think we all made our feelings clear as it happened about the lack of responsible adults in the vicinities. While I like that there was some explanation, like, oh, this dude has connections, that's why he keeps getting away with this shit. But like, yeah, I don't know. I feel sorry. There's lots of kids behind me and stuff.
You're good.
You have kids home with you today. You're good.
Yeah.
We need Dr. Mahoy.
Yeah. I feel like most of the other adults that have been presented so far are not the kind that would give a shit about his connections, and that something would have already been done by now.
Yeah,
just
like
like
Dr. Mahoy. He the way that Dr. Mahoy is described, he would have grabbed Professor Smith by the scruff of the neck and been like, "Hey,
get the fuck out of my infirmary, bitch!"
Well, right, like full Dwayne Johnson, holding him by the scruff of his neck.
Well, that's one of the things that we talked about when that character originally came up, was that we all got the immediate impression of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
And then AP confirmed that was the inspiration for this character. It's like, yep.
So I mean, could it be something that gets like resolved and eventually, or like, oh, he was just really good at hiding it and now he's getting sloppy? Like, I think if we get some sort of resolution on that, it won't be as like. But yeah, we'll see.
I don't know, because here's the thing. It seems like he's been getting really sloppy because he did this out in the open, whereas before he would like do it like behind closed doors.
Yeah. And
it's making me wonder if maybe the thing that affected the other stones is also affecting him. Because we're playing with the whole like, oh, negative attributes were like
enhanced
10 times worse. I wonder if that's why he's like suddenly
getting unhinged.
Yeah. Especially since there was mention in this chapter that Professor Smith had friends in high places that were getting him out of trouble left and right whenever someone did try to get him called out or some shit like that. There's also that whole bit of him allowing that whole negative aspect, that negative amplification to take over for the cocky attitude that he has in knowing, well, my friends can get me out of this. I don't have to give a shit right now, especially we're in an emergency.
Which, that's a whole situation that I have a fucking issue with. Like, people that can wiggle out of consequences simply because they have connections. Especially when they're the consequences for their shitty actions. Like, I have huge issues with that.
My dad was like that.
Well, Something I like to point out, though, is this book is pretty much all about who you know and your connections. Like,
That's
Daniel, who knows Wesley because he is Clara's now fiance, is able to go to him, and apparently he's high enough up that, oh yeah, so my dad might be friends with the general, but I'm friends with Prince and the king.
My father will help. And then goes up to Wesley. Wesley's like, my father will hear about this.
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, AP says, I honestly don't know why I did, but he's what came to mind, and mine also.
It happens.
Yeah. And apparently her dad was like that as well. It's like, yep, shitty fathers.
Speaking of a not shitty father... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that even though we haven't met him yet, that Wesley's dad seems okay.
Yeah. He seems alright for now.
So, we know there's very heavy inspiration with, well, I mean, let's face it, some of the main characters are King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, very heavily inspired by and playing with that lore. Growing up, I have to go back and read some of these, but growing up, King Arthur, from what I remember, King Arthur was always about the just and doing what's right and, you know, morals and ethics and kind of playing with those, or doing what's right for the good of the kingdom, that sort of thing. But having not read it recently, I don't know how to judge that, because there might be things that I missed reading King Arthur as a kid, because I used to love King Arthur. I'm gonna have to go back and read some of those, and the whole reason I'm bringing this up is I want to know what the themes are for King Arthur versus what the themes are for this book. I kind of a comparative analysis almost, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does.
I think it depends on who wrote it, because with King Arthur there are so many retellings of the story.
You know what? Fair.
Oh, yeah.
Fair.
Bird is calling. I'll be right back.
Yeah, no worries. No, that is totally fair. One of the other things that I kind of tossed around a little bit during this chapter was I need to learn how to do a Scottish accent.
It's all about rolling the R's.
I'd like to also learn how to do a transatlantic accent. I don't know what it is, but I have this thing. It's a sensory thing for the transatlantic accent and the way that it sounds like, you know, the 1930s, 1940s movie stars, right?
When you mean the accent that was created for movies and stuff?
Yes, the transatlantic accent, like
it's a creation of.
I want to say not Audrey
And
Hepburn.
what can you do, my fine effeminate fellow?
Yeah, something like that, like the transatlantic accent. I know it was a creation specifically for film, but for me, the way it sounds, it's a sensory thing, and I want to learn it so bad.
Kind of like how people will have a sensory reaction when listening to ASMR.
Yes, which is funny because I can't stand ASMR. I don't like it. There's just something about it that drives me nuts.
In me, it just depends on the kind.
I'm going to hold back from doing ASMR type shit.
Probably a good idea.
So,
sorry, my unmedicated ass is like, you should do ASMR shit like right now. Do the thing. It's like, no, bad.
And I just
hold on.
It hits the wrong parts.
Do it. I know.
Do it.
God damn it.
Hi, Nugget.
What else have
Fortunately,
we got?
I'm not wrinkly enough to pull that truly off.
Do it.
Well, I like how she just accepts. So the mom, I think the mom's going through a lot right now, but it is slightly concerning that she just accepts the fact that there's this new exchange student who comes in right after all of these disasters.
Probably because she's still in shock.
I mean, fair. And I guess since no one's questioning it, that's why they get away with it.
Don't
But
ask
I mean...
questions you don't want to know.
Yeah, exactly.
I know we touched on the whole Mary Sue topic before, and AP, I'm sorry if you feel like we're tearing your book apart. But this is kind of the part of this is kind of how it works with literary discussion, and I don't like censoring stuff like that. I'd prefer to be more up and honest about things. That way you have kind of an idea of how people might react to things. Not to say that your writing isn't good or the idea isn't good. It's just kind of, these are things that we find, right? Mm-hmm. How do we feel about the whole Mary Sue complex that we thought we saw earlier?
You mean with the blushing between the two?
That and Clara kind of portraying the whole Mary Sue persona.
I think
there's no kind of about it
there.
Sorry, Lady Punnet.
I think it's still kind of there from what we've seen. Like with the whole everyone still having a thing for her and pay attention to me, I can help. Like it can still be a characteristic of someone who genuinely wants to help. Mm-hmm. But I think with what we've seen in previous chapters, mm-hmm. and all of the backstory I have on her, it's like how you can't write a good character that has a happy background. Mm-hmm. Is kind of the implication I'm getting from this.
Fair. Mm.
Critter. And the fact that we haven't seen any perceived flaws in Clara either.
Critter.
Yeah, no, there's definitely an air of Mary Sueism in a lot of characters. But it's part of it, you can be like, well, you know, they're teenagers. Teenagers are kind of one-dimensional to begin with. But I feel definitely like there are some missed opportunities, and I do feel like I am not a fan of the overly womped characters. Mm-hmm. Like, I get enough of that shit in my own life. I read to get away from that shit.
Yep.
And so when it's like, just like, boom, 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 it's like, no, I can't, like, give them a break, please. So I am hopeful that changes and that grows. It looks like there's hints of that happening. Mm-hmm. And like AP says, she's not the first one is her least favorite. And yeah, that happens with writing, right? Like the more you write, it changes. And you look at other stuff before that and you're like, what the hell was I thinking?
Yep.
It happens.
Same thing with drawings.
Yeah, exactly.
You feel the cringe.
I do have a question for AP, actually, since we have AP here with us. Have the other two books been released yet?
I think so.
This one was released in 2021. And typically books are released about a year after each other.
Mm-hmm.
So, we'll figure that out in a second. Yes, they have. Okay. Let me make note of that. Give me 1 second. There's 3 books in this series altogether, yeah?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else we want to talk about for this chapter? For chapter 7?
Sorry, my mind's kind of bouncing between 3 things right now.
You're good.
AP is working on the 4th book.
Yep.
Bye.
The fact that Lilith has such an affinity with Amethyst makes me jealous.
Yeah.
Sorry. That is unbelievably cute, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I want an Amethyst plushie now.
Note to author, market Amethyst plushies.
Yes, please. Like, because I shared in the general chat for this Discord server, mm-hmm. I posted a picture for Lady Punnet to take into consideration the dragon backpack.
There's actually quite a few different styles. It's pretty cute.
Mm-hmm. I've seen those. There's actually a plush version for it that you can sew.
Sweet. I need this pattern.
Let's see if I can find it.
So it seems to me like we are scraping the bottom of the barrel here. for things to talk about. Base Lilith off my niece, and yes, I'm wanting someone to make him. Interesting. So it seems to me like we're scraping the bottom of the barrel here for things to talk about. Which seems to tell me that this might be a good place to cut this episode off. I think we've had some in-depth discussion. We've brought up some ideas, some likes, some dislikes for this chapter. Any last-minute thoughts that you guys want to share?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head. Although, I had a second cup of tea, and now my brain is like, hey, you just had some tea, even though it's like supposed to help keep you awake and whatnot. It's time for the slips.
Yep.
It's like, I don't want to use the slips. No slip.
With that being said, guys, that pretty much brings us to the end of Chapter 7 and our discussion. We'll be getting into Chapter 8 starting next week. So feel free to come and join us for that. If you'd like to join us on social media, you can do so at lanktr.ee/Idiot Book Nook, where you'll be able to find links to all of our individual socials, our YouTube, our Twitch, the podcast. And we do go live on Twitch at 9 a.m. Mountain Time on Wednesday mornings, where you get basically the unfiltered experience. So please feel free to come and join us for that if you so choose. We would love to be able to interact with you in real time. But for the Idiot Book Nook, I'm Blazewing.
I am the Reading Dragon.
I'm Lady Punnet.
I'm Crittershy.
And we'll see you next week and the next episode as we pick up Chapter 8. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.